President of Nigeria Labour Congress, Comrade Ayuba Waba. He joins us from Abuja. Good morning, Comrade. Thank you for joining us this morning. Good to see you again. How are you coping this period? I mean, different challenges for different people. Unusual for Labour, I guess, as well as everybody else, Comrade.
Thank you, Chamberlain.
No Alutak this time, is it?
A pleasure meeting you this morning and also meeting Nigerians. It has been a very challenging period globally, and particularly Nigeria is not an exception, and it has been one form of challenge to another, the socio-economic challenges, disruption in the way we relate, in the way we produce, and clearly speaking, as I speak, over 80% of the global workforce have been affected by either restriction or disruption in production lines. So this is where we are, and this is really a challenge, and that's why it's important all hands are on deck to be able to provide all the needed support and ideas to be able to move forward and also fight towards containment.
Well, the letter that you wrote to the head of the PTF COVID-19, different interpretations from different people. Maybe you should just go ahead and tell us about it. Some say that their understanding of that letter is that you're saying they should not extend this lockdown because if they do, there might be social disruptions or eruptions. What did you say in that letter? What was your message?
Well, thank you very much. Let me try to clear the point. Since the advent of the novel COVID-19, and particularly since the identification of the index case in Nigeria and the setting up of the presidential committee to respond to this challenge, NLC have been interfacing very closely with the presidential committee, and we have been sharing ideas, and we have also been dialoguing because clearly you know that workers will be affected, especially the frontline workers, the healthcare provider, but by and large also production lines will be affected. If you look at the situation in Nigeria today, many sectors are shut down. One, the transport sector, be it the road transport, air transport, have been affected, and particularly in the road transport, you know that those are informal sector, and the drivers feed almost on a daily basis. So arising from this, we have been very proactive, and let me say and appreciate the fact that the doors of the presidential committee at the highest level have remained open to dialogue and also consultation. It is in the context of that we now wrote about 13-page document to try to advise on what needs to be done. Because one, it's not only about treatment, control, and then prevention. It's also about how do we strike a balance in making sure also that the economy doesn't suffer. Because when you look at the global picture, and even the picture here at home, looking at the economic indices, is the fact that there is a lot of challenges, and the prospect is very gloom. So clearly, all those submissions we made, which are about 14-fold, also borders on the issue of the fact that beyond treatment, because part of the challenge of the coronavirus is one, the issue of mobility and mortality, but the most important and very pronounced issue is also that all lines of production have been affected, and particularly those in the informal sector. And what we wrote in that document and what we have also discussed is the fact that we must be able to strike a balance at this point in time. If you are going to extend, then there are things you must put in place, especially palliative, that must reach the poor of the poor, because at the end of the day, you may make pronouncements, but if there are no conditions, precedents that have been set that people can also try to conform with, at the end of the day, those pronouncements will be violated. And we don't want that to happen. And therefore, we gave clear picture of what needs to be done, particularly the palliative. We said that the current use of the social investment platform have not delivered the desired results, and therefore is a template that is not supposed to be used. We gave a proposal to say that we can't look at other models because this is an emerging issue, and therefore we need to take care of the poor of the poorest, particularly those that cannot have a meal per day. And you can see them moving from one part of the country to another. In fact, I have a record of some of our people that use motorcycle actually to move far from Lagos, even to far part of the north in the night, and some are using trucks. So this is to say that most of them that are hustling, maybe from morning to find what to eat in the evening, they may not be able to conform with this lockdown. So those are the prospect of what we said. And we also said that, well, looking at the challenge also, because clearly speaking, the major stake of our economy, oil and gas, have been affected because of the dwindling price. And we said that the next sector that is most important is agriculture. And in some part of the country now, people are preparing actually to go back to farm, and the farming season is almost at its door. So we need to strike a balance in going forward. These are things that needed to be done, because even countries around the world are also thinking out of the box, because the WHO have said clearly that this is one challenge that we'll live with for some time now. We don't see in the just very close future where this thing can be addressed overnight. So we need to look at the two side by side. Looking at the issue of the close down, because also the challenge is that we didn't start the close down across the country at once. In fact, it's from one state to another, and that gave room for people to keep moving from one state to another. And therefore, some possibly have gone under lockdown for about 2-3 weeks, and then some are just commencing. So clearly, we must strike a balance, and so that's the context of that advice we gave, which borders on many, many other issues. But importantly, is also how to unlock the economy, has been done in other countries gradually, so that at least services, very critical services, can also come up. We also discussed the issue of care for the frontline health workers. Today, as we speak, and all over the world, the healthcare workers are also being tested positive and have interfaced with the unions in the health sector, and particularly the National Association of Nigerian Nurses and Midwives. Two variables are actually important to be considered. One is that many people now visiting our healthcare facilities don't actually disclose their medical history. Somebody will come and say, no, I have malaria, and therefore, please treat me for malaria. And at the end of the day, the healthcare worker will try to do that. And the second leg of it is that PPEs are not provided, particularly at primary health care and secondary health care level. And therefore, this exposes the health workers to the risk of also being affected. So all those proposals and issues were then raised, and we thought that the committee should take it up, and they are taking it up. So this is the context of the document we wrote. It's not just one letter. No, it's a document that accommodated the issue that we think we should raise as Labour, and we have been doing that over policy issue, over different issues across the country.
Right. So we understand that you had a meeting with the SGF yesterday, and I know it probably centered around the coming week. Will there be an extension of a lockdown or not? So briefly, in just a minute, because we'll need to go on a break and come back to this conversation, what is the position on Labour on an extension of a lockdown? Are you for it or against it?
Thank you very much. Yes, as I said, the interface have been ongoing, including the one you mentioned yesterday. Each time we have a new idea, we try to reach out to the committee and try to share this idea with them. And therefore, the idea we share with them is what I've also said, that is well documented, and I think is also what the media have been able to assess. We said, one, that we must also think out of the box and strike a balance between continuous lockdown and also allowing very critical and important production lines to continue to actually work and produce. We say so because of the fact that, as I said, there are very obvious challenges to the economy. And clearly, as the World Bank DG have said, that this issue of corona, let us not be under any illusion that it will end in 1 or 2 days or 2 months, because some countries are just experiencing the infection. Some countries experience it earlier, but even those that have experienced it earlier, we have seen the resurgence of new cases. So clearly, this is an issue that we need to strike a balance, and therefore, this is the context of our idea, that if you need to go forward to then continue lockdown, there are things you must necessarily do so that the citizens don't also revolt and say,
okay,
well,
comrade,
a hungry person, they said, is an angry person.
We'll
so
let you talk about...
We must take care of the poor of the poorest.
Pardon me, comrade. We'll let you talk about those things that you like to see them do when we return in a moment. Stay with us. Welcome back. So, comrade, could you go ahead and tell us what are those things that you wanted the government to do if they need to extend the lockdown?
First is because it's very clear and obvious that the coronavirus, for now, the best form of containment is the issue of trying to enlighten the public and ensure that the issue of prevention and control measures are put in place, because for now is the best approach. And also the fact that the issue of contact tracing and disease surveillance need to be stepped up. But this has to be done concurrently across all the states of the Federation, in all nooks and crannies for it to be effective. Because if some states are doing it effectively and others are not doing it effectively, then it becomes counterproductive, because people out of desperation will still be moving around. So first we said in our proposal, we highlighted the issue and the need for the frontline healthcare workers to be given adequate protection at all levels, outside the issue of scaling up information dissemination and also advising people to do the needful, is the issue of protecting this very critical workforce. In all other jurisdictions that this challenge has been taken up, the first line of defense is to ensure that the healthcare givers, because the cases have continued to increase, and therefore we don't want a situation where those healthcare givers will then be overwhelmed. Secondly, we also said we need to also have some volunteers. And I know that we can have volunteers. Many are ready to volunteer in terms of information dissemination. We want it to be scaled down to units, to wards, and also to local government areas, where all of us will be on the same page and speaking with the same voice and also responding effectively. This will be a most effective way. And secondly, we also said that there should be gradual opening up, because for now, the economic nerve center of Nigeria, Lagos, is closed down. And also the administrative capital of Nigeria, I can say virtually that Abuja is closed down. And like it's been done elsewhere, that gradually we must look at very critical sectors of production and think out of the box and see how gradually those key sectors can also continue to operate and lines of service also open up, because this thing, we don't know when it will end, and therefore the issue of lockdown is only a means to achieving an end. It cannot be an end in itself. So clearly speaking, we must be thinking along this line. And thirdly, we also talk, which I said earlier, is about reaching out to the poor of the poorest, because, you know, a hungry person cannot be contented. Whatever you will tell him is difficult. And we have seen that happen in many countries around the world, where people that are hungry and they don't have any social security cover, they don't have any means of livelihood, they have been turned to destitute, and therefore there will be the issue of people now revolting, or people now saying, oh, we cannot longer stay at home. So clearly speaking, this is what we need to do. Then the other critical sectors I mentioned, like transport, the sector, because it's time now to make sure that also we don't take decisions that will affect even the farming season. How do we move fertilizer and other very important items that needed to also be moved around, so that we don't compound our situation? So we have given this very clear advice and idea on how best to move forward, looking at the challenge, and also borrowing from what is happening elsewhere, because this is a core challenge to all of us. As I said, is both economic and health issue. And therefore, we must look at our approach from the two fronts, addressing the health challenge, trying to minimize mortality and morbidity, and also trying to scale up preventive measures. But secondly, we must look at the critical challenge and what it poses to our economy. And therefore, we must put the two side by side. And these have been advised that all those two must be put side by side when you are trying to take decision. Because take, for instance, we continue to lock down. And clearly speaking, this will have a multiplier effect in our economy. And therefore, we have raised this issue very fundamentally. And I hope that the committee will look at this and also take the decision in the best interest of Nigeria, in the best interest of protecting life, but also protecting means of livelihood. Because means of livelihood is very, very important for the survival of our people and also for the economy to actually go back. Because we don't want also the economy to remain for a long time in coma. That means that if it remains in a very long time in coma, it has a lot of challenges and a lot of people will be affected. And looking at the issue also that 70% of our people actually are engaged in the informal economy. They actually do their business on day-to-day basis. and small and medium-scale enterprises that may not also be able to even continue to pay their workers if this long. So we must be able to strike a balance. So it's time now to strike a balance and look at what should be the needful. And also moving forward, Labour will continue to engage the committee as usual to bring our ideas on board and also see how we can contribute to addressing this very important challenge.
Well, I know you might have heard this before, but those recommendations about taking care of a lot more people and bringing more people to benefit from the socials, the stimulus package. But some time ago, I mean, even recently, they'll tell you about resources. Do we have the resources to take care of all those people, as you've highlighted?
I'm not talking of everybody. I'm talking of the poor of the poorest. And in our communities, we can identify them. I'm referring to people that cannot afford 1 meal per day. If you lock them, then even hunger will then have to deal with them, and other disposing factors will also affect them. So, and what we propose is that at ward level, at unit level, we can engage our religious leaders, we can engage mass-based organization, we can engage the structures in the wards to be able to identify these people that are actually poor of the poorest. Let me give you an example. Take, for instance, our business hub around Lagos. There are people that you see them with spanners and screwdrivers waiting in the front of a shop where they sell spare parts. Though they are waiting when you buy a spare part, they fix the spare part for you. They don't have shop. And therefore, that's the only means of their livelihood. And there are so many. And therefore, when you say go and lock down for such people, clearly speaking, the first issue is how do we take care of our stomach? And how do we then have something to eat? So these are the people I'm referring to. Whatever means that can be used to make sure that this very important segment of the informal sector, the artisans that actually have to work on daily basis to get what they eat, we should target them. And that's why I said the platform of the social investment platform cannot be used in this case. But Abuja FCT have used a model, which I think if other states can borrow it, and even the federal government is better, and I think it can be, it will address the issue because they have this type of committee at ward level and also at the unit level. And we know that we have units, we have wards, and therefore at this level, we will be able to identify the poor of the poorest, those that don't have any means of survival outside, also the destitute. We have many of them destitutes on our streets, and therefore when you lock down, how do we cater for them? These are the group of people I'm referring to, and these are the group of people that first we must give priority before others, because those are the group of people that are mostly affected.
Remember that the president said in the very first speech he made just before the lockdown of Lagos, Ogun, and the FCT said that certain segments of the economy are exempted. The telecom service providers, even agriculture is also exempted on that list, as well as so many other essential service workers. Do you see that as being significant in the arguments that you have raised?
Looking at what is happening and what is also the practicality, what is on ground, I don't think that have gone to a larger extent to address the challenge. And that's why we said it should be gradual. Possibly that's the first phase. In going forward in the second phase, we must be able to expand some of those sectors. Take, for instance, the transport sector. Is completely grounded and nothing is happening. And this is a sector that employs many workers, and also some workers, many of them, their means of survival is actually from in the transport sector, air and land, and especially also commuters.
Comrade,
those that
if I can quickly butt in there. So, Comrade, just one moment. This transport sector that you mentioned, you would agree that it's a very critical sector, and it makes many people vulnerable because there is no such thing as physical distancing in the transport sector, in any bus or in any car. Once you sit with anyone who has this virus, whether the person is showing symptoms or not, the person takes it away. So the person who has passed it on to somebody else may not die of it, but the person who has just recently contracted it may have underlying illness. So that's perhaps one reason that the argument is let's shut down everywhere first, because there is going to be life after COVID-19, but we need to be alive and well enough so that this thing doesn't spread beyond unnecessarily. So that's just to address perhaps the question of the transport sector that you raised. How do you react to that?
No, transport sector is in phases. We have the sector that moves goods from different parts of the country. Take, for instance, fertilizer, which we know should be moved possibly from Lagos, Port Harcourt to the hinterlands, and therefore is also part of transport. So what I'm saying, this thing should be in phases. We look at very critical sectors, and in the transport sector, we are looking at logistics supply, critical needs. Take, for instance, supplies. If you lock down, how do we even get critical supply to other parts of the country, hinterland? Because we may consume what we have in stock now. And therefore, this is what I'm referring to. I'm not referring to possibly the movement of people, which also, in the long run, we also have to consider it, because lockdown cannot be perpetual. We must think out of the box. If we need to enforce social distancing, we need to do that. Already you saw that Emirates Airline is looking at that, and also looking at the issue of social distancing, even within the aircraft, and also fumigating aircraft at the end of every trip. So we must think of out of the box to look at how do we look at all those things, because as I keep emphasizing, and I want to quote the Director General of the WHO, he said, let us not be under an illusion that this issue will go overnight. That is an issue that will take time because of the fact that some states or some countries are just experiencing infection now, and some have experienced it, but there is also the issue of resurgence of infection. This is what he said. And therefore, in the context of all of this, we must strike a balance, and that's why the proposal is a proposal to look at it. What can we do in this circumstance? Are you proposing that we should continue lockdown perpetually? What will be the implication? What will be the implication to livelihood? So we must think out of the box to look at what best can we do in a very systematic and smart way to be able to also carefully unlock some of those areas that have been locked. So this is what we are proposing, and therefore it's something that we can discuss, and we are ready to discuss, and we have been interfacing with the committee, I said, at the highest level to look at those issues and look at the proposals that are workable, and those proposals that are working also elsewhere. Many industries around the world are also opening up in the mix of this, because they have seen also the counterproductivity of some of those things. Haiti, 2 days ago, opened their textile and garment industry, and they have been enforcing social distancing. So we can enforce social distancing if there is proper information dissemination. We should be able to look at sectors that we can enforce social distancing, and then we can be able to look at how best we can respond to this challenge.
All right, well, certainly we'll hope for the best so that everything and all can, get back to what we do. But well, thank you for coming on this morning, Comrade Ayuba, President of Nigeria Labour Congress.
Thank you, Chamberlain. I appreciate it.